Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to your favorite show. Hopefully your favorite show, Market Watch Mondays. We are back for another segment, man. This is not going to be a long one because for those of you who are my Patreon members and have been following me, I've been cranking out, trying to get these updated rankings out for folks, and I'm still not done. So it's going to be Team No Sleep all night tonight, but I still want to get this episode recorded out because we do not miss deadlines here at BDGE and Bunkbed Breakdowns, man. We're all about the consistency. I've yet to miss a Market Watch Mondays episode. I've been sick. I've been out. I've been doing all this shit, but I've never missed it. So I'm not going to let you guys down now just because it's draft weekend. We're still out here grinding. I still got some topics that I want to cover going in. This is not going to be a rankings episode. Once I finalize the rankings, get out to the Patreon members, get in the guide and all that stuff, I'll do some rankings talk afterwards, but it'll be probably more around like guiding principles and discussions on the draft. Hopefully you guys are doing well. As you can see, it's freaking pitch black here. I got the light shining on my face, so no more sunlight. That's the bonus of working late and grinding Team No Sleep, but it's tiresome, man. So without further ado, man, let's keep it short. Let's get the shit on the show. Let's get the shit on the show. Let's get this shit on the road. But before we get there, y'all know what time it is, man. Hit that motherfucking intro, baby. All right. So this week, man, as all of you know, it was draft weekend. And, man, we had a draft for the ages. It was pretty fun, man. A lot of shockers, a lot of fallers. You know, your typical draft stuff, but just exciting, man. Honestly, like, for those of us that are degenerates, in the fantasy space, we are obviously, especially for those of you Patreon members, who are obviously dynasty degenerates, we were in the Patreon Discord chatting it up all day long, just shitting on picks, praising picks, guessing picks. Some people, folks in there were doing their spoiler alert with was his name Don? I don't know. Whoever he is a snitch. We don't care about him on the channel. I told him to stop snitching. So, but it was a good time, man. It was a good time. So, again, those of you guys who are looking for that hardcore dynasty game, looking for access to all of my ranks, including Devi, so college players, a combined ranking list, including all college players, including a Devi rankings list, y'all want to get in on that Patreon, man. www.patreon.com/our pack and join up on the Wolf Pack. It's gonna be a freaking good time. Hardcore dynasty gamers, y'all know what y'all know what it is, man. Y'all know what it is. Sorry, I can't speak right now because, like I said, it's late and I've been grinding. But y'all know what it is. Make sure you get in there. We got about 220 people in there strong, and it is always popping. And rookie season is here. If you guys need guidance, trades, drafts, whatever, I'm in there all the time. The really other smart folks are in there all the time too, which is what it's all about, is building that community. And then, for those of you that aren't that hardcore, don't want to be in that type of community, that type of world, and just want to have some fun with it and, be a little bit more casual, always make sure to check out the BDG Patreon too, right? You've got Nick and Noah and all the fam in there just helping you guys out and talking shop and talking lifestyle, talking all that stuff. And then if you just want the ranks and the guide, man, hop on over to the Big Dog store, bdge.store, and get the draft guide. Draft guide will be updated with my rankings. The draft guide, however, will only include the it will only include the NFL and rookie rankings, so it will not include any of my college or Devi. So if you're not into that stuff, if you are into Devi, which I highly recommend you do get into, then make sure you hop on over the Patreon and get on that. Let's get into the main content at hand. And I think the main discussion point that I want to cover is what to do with landing spots and draft capital, right? You hear all the time. People say talent trumps all. Don't move stuff based on landing spot. Landing spot doesn't matter. Draft capital is good, but, you can ignore it for your own. Like, everyone wants to choose their own narratives, right? I'll just kind of walk you through how I think about it, right? I think that landing spot does matter, right? But you don't overreact to landing spot. I think landing spot matters differently for different positions, right? And to me, it makes sense. Maybe for those of you out there don't think it makes sense. But for me, like, I think landing spot impacts running backs a lot more than it does wide receiver. And same thing with draft capital. Draft capital should be weighted much more heavily in running back and quarterback, because those are the positions that if you have the draft capital, you're guaranteed to get the opportunity, and opportunity usually leads to production unless you stink. But, if you get the production, even if you stink, sometimes you can still consider a hit. Like, look back at Trent Richardson, right? He was like he was a top was he a top 5, top 10 pick? I forget. But he was a really, really high pick. He stinks, had no vision. If you ever seen Trent Richardson run, the guy runs with his eyes closed, basically his best impression of, Bird Box, if you guys ever seen that movie with Sandra Bullock. But that's what he did, and, he still produced a top-end season. So when it comes to running back specifically, if you get first-round draft capital, man, it is very, very hard to stink it up and not hit. Right, unless you're like Sony Michel, Rashad Penny, obviously those are some horror stories that we know of. But if we look back, all the hate that Leonard Fournette got, like that was a hit, right? Leonard Fournette, put up consecutive like top 12 seasons, right? And even last year down the stretch, he showed a little bit of himself. So if you get first round draft capital, you just get opportunity, right? And running back specifically, I mean, fantasy as a whole, volume is king, but for running back specifically, you get handed the ball and you run, right? Unless you're really, really, really shitty and your team really, really, really sucks, you're probably going to put up some points. So for me, that's why I think running backs, the landing spot matters a lot more because if you think about it, the inverse, right? Like most of us who are in the newer age of understanding or enlightenment, I would say, are of the belief that running backs don't matter, or to put it better, I don't like that phrase. I like to say running backs matter less. They just matter less than other positions because they're so reliant on offensive line. They're so reliant on the quarterback. They're so reliant on the offense and how often it scores, right? They're so reliant on the play calling if they're involved in the passing game. So there's so many other factors outside of the running back control that it makes sense. And a lot of that stuff is captured by what? Landing spot, right? So naturally, landing spot should really impact and dictate how you treat your running backs. I'm not of the belief that talent wins out, at the running back position because they have to overcome so much even if they are talented, right? Now, that's not to say you have to go and draft shitty running backs just because landing good spots, but, when push comes to shove, I think landing spot should actually play a pretty big factor. And, sometimes it doesn't work out, right? Sometimes you look at a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who actually I'm buying right now. But, you look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire and it didn't work out exactly as expected. But if we look back at why it didn't work out, it's not just because of CEH. It's because Kansas City had one of the worst offensive lines in the league last season, right? And that was one of my main concerns for Kansas City and why I had the Colts as the top landing spot for running backs, not Kansas City. But I still had Kansas City as a top landing spot just because of Patrick Mahomes, right? So now if you look at Kansas City, what do? They went in the offseason and addressed their biggest problem. They invested a ton in the offensive line because they realized that's where they fucked up, right? So if we look back, it's not that we missed on CEH per se. It's kind of that we really kind of missed on the landing spot in my eyes, right? Because we did not account for all of those different factors that actually went into his success. So when it comes to rookies now, right, we look at draft capital. That's always number one, really, really important. And then I do really consider landing spot. So you'll see movements in my running back rankings based on where I project them to, based on how I project them to do, based on where they land, right? So to take some examples from this class, like Najee Harris, right? He landed in, I would call it a good spot, right? Because at the end of the day, he got first round draft capital, which is what I really cared about. I was kind of concerned that he wasn't going to get it based on a lot of the film grids I saw from Lance Zierlein and stuff like that. So he got the first round draft capital and he landed in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, Pittsburgh Steelers O-line is trash, right? They've been bad for a couple years now. The days of Le'Veon Bell are long past, so we can't really expect that type of production. But he got the first round draft capital, and he has zero competition, so he's going to get all the touches. And at the end of the day, if you get 250, 300 touches, man, chances are you're probably going to be a running back one, especially if you are capable in the receiving game and capable on the goal line, which Najee Harris is. So to me, that is a positive landing spot, although you have to really understand that the offensive line just isn't what it used to be, right? Now for Travis Etienne, I didn't like the landing spot as much, and I've said this on Twitter, Urban Meyer and what he's done. He said some shit we basically panic draft Travis Etienne because someone sniped us on Kadarius Toney. So sometimes, man, you stupid shit comes to your head, and you should just keep it in your head and not say it out loud. Because the more he talks, and based on what I've seen in this draft, the more they do, the less confidence I have in Jacksonville Jaguars as a whole. But even though I don't think that is the greatest landing spot, Travis Etienne still got first-round draft capital, right? So you cannot overreact and start putting guys like Trey Sermon ahead of him. Or even, in my opinion, you can't even really put Javonte Williams ahead of him. Because Javonte Williams, even though he got second-round draft capital, which is what we kind of expected for everyone, he went to Denver Broncos, which has a incumbent Melvin Gordon. And as much as we want to make fun of Melvin Gordon about how he's washed, I think him being there is going to be a great impediment to what Javonte Williams is able to do. So when it comes to top 3 running backs, right, I'm looking at these landing spots, and I am factoring them into my decision process. And I think you should too, right? And if you look a little bit deeper in the class, I think Trey Sermon, right, landing in San Francisco 49ers, that forever was like my top dream landing spot for any running back, especially someone like a Travis Etienne, right, who's super fast and explosive. Now, Trey Sermon isn't that, but he got 3rd-round draft capital, which is more than I expected. I didn't really think anyone was going to go day 2 other than the top 3. So him going there should boost his value somewhat. But if you always think back to what I say, right, what don't you do? My golden rule in rookie drafts, you do not reach for questionable running back profiles over better wide receiver prospects in that late 1st to 2nd round. And people are going to absolutely draft Trey Sermon in the 1st round. I can see it now. Like I can see it in a couple weeks, a month from now. You're going to see Trey Sermon in the back end of the 1st, top of the 2nd. And for me, that's going to be a no thank you pass, even though I really, really love the landing spot. But there's just way better prospects. Guys like Elijah Moore that are there. Guys like Rondale Moore are going to be there, right? These types of folks are going to be there in that late 1st or 2nd range, and they are top-end wide receiver profiles, and there's no way in hell I'm passing on one of them for a questionable profile in a running back. So that's what I mean, right? You got to balance it. You got to balance the landing spot. You got to balance draft capital and think about all of it in tandem instead of thinking about just one factor on its own. So for me, even though I don't like Travis Etienne's landing spot that much, right, I'm not going to really tank him in my rankings because of it, because at the end of the day, he got 1st-round draft capital, and I wasn't expecting that. So, those two things kind of wash out. And, for all the talk about Urban Meyer coming out, and I even tweeted it too, and I was like, everyone loses. And I do think everyone loses a bit, but that wasn't meant to say, like, oh, like James Robinson is going to overtake Travis Etienne. I actually believe that Etienne's only going to be a 3rd-down back. They didn't spend a 1st-round draft pick on a 3rd-down back, right? We always talk about actions speaking louder than words. Their actions there said it all. And as much as it pains me to say this as a James Robinson truther, as much as I think it was the wrong decision, we need to come to terms with what the reality is, right? And the only difference is I don't think James Robinson is a bum. So that's what I mean by everyone loses. I don't think James Robinson is going to just disappear from the offense. I think they're going to have some split work. I do fully expect Travis Etienne to lead it all, but I don't think Travis Etienne is going to be a workhorse. I think, James Robinson will be worked in there on the goal line and probably even in some receiving work and definitely on 1st and 2nd downs. And the problem is they have a bad offense, so now you're splitting carries. So that's why I don't think it's a great landing spot. But balanced out with draft capital, it's fine. So, but, the part where I think people make the most mistake and why people – like the general saying is like, oh, never, talent wins out and never account for landing spot and all that stuff. The reason why that comes about is because you have people that overreact, with guys like Keyshawn Vaughn, guys like Devin Singletary, and propel them up way the fuck up, way too far up, way higher than where they should be. And that's where you need to draw the line, right? Look at the top end and make your adjustments there, but draw the line after that, right? So that's for running backs. For quarterbacks, it's a similar thing. Like if you have draft capital tied up in a quarterback, like a top 5 pick, that gives you a lot of runway, a lot of safety. And similar to running backs, you're going to get that volume because they're going to send you on the fucking field and you're going to throw the passes. So, Trey Lance landing in the San Francisco 49ers, that was actually my pick. I had Justin Fields for a long time, but, right before the draft, I went into one of my leagues. We're supposed to guess the top 10 picks. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the top 10 picks. So I went 1 to 7, got the players name for name, and Trey Lance at number 3 to San Francisco 49ers. And he has leapt Justin Fields in my ranks, as much as I hate to say it. And the reason why I'm doing it is because I'm not the best. I'm not even the best. I'm not a good QB evaluator at all, right? So when you have a draft capital difference that's that big, I have to account for it. And the landing spot is a pretty good one, man. He jumps in an offense where basically, you have a very quarterback-friendly offense. First of all, you got Kyle Shanahan as the coach, so he's pretty creative on the offensive side of the ball. But you have yak monsters. You have Deebo Samuel. You have Brandon Ayuk. You have George Kittle. Three of the better yak guys in the league on the same team, and that's just going to be very, very friendly for the squad. And then obviously they brought on Trey Sermon. They brought on sleeper favorite Elijah Mitchell as well. So got a lot of weapons. Do I expect him to start right away? Maybe not, but he's got top three pick draft capital. And that's really, really nice. And I'm going to put him ahead of Zach Wilson. I put him ahead of Zach Wilson, even though Zach Wilson higher draft capital, but that's only like a difference of a pick. Whereas like Justin Fields kind of fell into the middling rounds. And I still love Justin Fields. They're still in the same tier for me, but I just moved Trey Lance above a little bit because, in the past, I've kind of like gone against the grain and like, didn't account for draft capital as much, in the Tua and like, Justin Herbert and all that stuff and Daniel Jones and Josh Allen. And like, I think that's a mistake because at the end of the day, QBs like running backs are more tied to volume, which is tied to draft capital than the other positions. Talent absolutely matters for the long run, but in the near term, you're going to have draft capital, and draft capital is going to support the volume that you get. So for me, quarterbacks and running backs are kind of in that type of mold where I do think landing spot matters. I do think draft capital matters a lot more than the other positions. It's not to say that talent doesn't matter, but talent absolutely matters as well. But it's just that, it's more equally weighted, right? Now, when it comes to wide receivers, it's like a little bit different for me because at the end of the day, wide receivers, we have a very analytical approach. We have a lot of numbers. We have a lot of stuff that can help us boost our hit rates, right? And so draft capital is still the biggest factor, by far the biggest factor, obviously. But talent wins targets, right? Just because you got the draft capital does not mean you're going to be on the field and beat out other NFL caliber cornerbacks to get the ball. Whereas in a running back, they hand you the ball, or a quarterback, you get snapped the ball every single play. So that's the difference for me. And that's why, when I look at the wide receivers, as long as when I was going in to build my ranks, right, my top 5 wide receivers, I had draft capital in mind, projected draft capital in mind based on what I've been seeing, based on what I've been seeing in mocks from mainstream media guys, from guys I trust, et cetera, et cetera. And for the most part, the top of the draft basically fell exactly as I thought. And I said, look, if Rashad Bateman gets first-round draft capital, if Rondale Moore gets second-round draft capital, probably nothing's going to move because I expected Jalen Waddle to go very, very early. I didn't expect him to go – actually, no, I did. I actually called Jalen Waddle to 6th to Miami. So, again, it's just that I don't make – but if you look at my wide receiver ranks pre- and post-draft, at least at the top part of it, there isn't too much that's shifting, right? There isn't too much that's shifting. In fact, my top 5, as I'm completing my ranks now, is probably going to stay the same because their expected draft capital and what I had expected in mind when I put those ranks together are the same. And landing spot for wide receiver, I don't account for it as much because at the end of the day, that situation changes really quickly and talent will win out at wide receiver like pretty much more often than not, right? And, don't get me wrong, talent wins out at the other positions as well, but it's just way more evident at wide receiver because you have to earn your opportunity. It's not just handed to you just because you have draft capital. Now, it means you get on the field, but if you keep getting on the field and you keep sucking, you're not going to get on the field anymore. Look at like N'Keal Harry, one of my prior favorites in the class, right? Like he can't even beat out Jacoby Myers anymore, right? So it's like wide receiver is a position where as long as they get like first round, second round draft capital, I'm pretty happy, and my rankings won't shift that much. But if they fall a lot, then they're going to shift. And, this year, that's why I paid a lot of attention to mainstream media. I had Seth really high to start the year, and I moved him more and more and more down. The more I learned, the more I felt like he was not going to get draft capital, I shifted him down more and more and more. And, for the most part, luckily, I was like pretty accurate on guessing where draft capital will be, so my wide receiver rankings really won't shift that much because of it. And it's because of the concepts I talked about, is that wide receiver is talent driven, right? And then tight end is almost more like running backs and quarterback because like I think I just basically let draft capital and athleticism do the talking there for me because I don't really know how to project tight ends. I haven't seen too many great tight end models out there. I just focus on athleticism, production, and draft capital. And this tight end class again stinks, right? That at the end of the day, that there's really no other way to put it. There's Kyle Pitts and there's nobody else that I'm really interested in at all. And thankfully, after the testing from from Brevin Jordan, who I was really high on coming into the draft and coming into the athletic testing, he was like my tight end 2 or 3 of the class. And then I saw his RAS score and his athletic testing. I was like, nope, this guy's freaking moving. I literally dropped him like 100 and something ranks before the draft happened. And thank God I did because what happened? He didn't get drafted because people were like, well, dude, this dude tested like fucking Elijah Holyfield, and we don't need Elijah Holyfield playing on tight end position, right? So that's basically what happened. And tight end, it's pretty easy. You just look at draft capital, look at athletic testing, and then I consider landing spot as well. Because the thing with tight ends is you can be a good tight end, but if you're not in a system that features you, it's just not going to matter. And that's why betting on tight ends is so risky, because like you don't know where they're going to go. Like even if they get the draft capital, they're not necessarily going to be in an offense that features them. Thankfully, I think Kyle Pitts landed in the perfect spot for him to be featured and to excel, and which is why I actually moved him up a little bit now that it's confirmed. One, that he's got super high draft capital, he's incredibly athletic, and two, he's got a decent landing spot. So, you know, he kind of checks all the boxes there from production profile, and then obviously all the film people love him, all the film people that I trust love him. So that's kind of what I wanted to go through today, right? Just a positional by positional, how to think about and how to deal with landing spot. You know, people always say like don't disregard it or whatever. For me, I account for it, but I account for it differently depending on what position I'm looking at. And that's how I approach it. Is it right? Is it wrong? Time will tell. Over the past little while, a couple of years I've been playing, it's worked out decently for me. Not to say I haven't whiffed here and there. You know, I put CH ahead Swift, for example, because I overweighed that landing spot. But again, I think it's because we miscalculated what that landing spot was like. We didn't. It's like. It's not like we missed on CH as an eval. We kind of just overweighted our knowledge of what we thought Kansas City would be. And for what it's worth, I think Kansas City would bounce back this year. So stay tuned for that shit. CH, you should be targeting him everywhere after all those offensive line adjustments. So that's how I think about it. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. In the next few episodes, I'll probably break down a lot of my ranks and how I thought about it, why players moved up and down. But this one just wanted to be a little bit of a theory crafting, kind of like give you guys a little insight as I'm going through my ranks and building my ranks, why I'm moving players up and down. Just keep those factors in mind for each of the positions, all right? So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Sorry, I'm like struggling with talking now because it's freaking, what is it? It's like 11:30 p.m. and I still have probably another 3 or 4 hours of work, so wish me luck. But want to get the episode to you guys out there, so hopefully you guys catch it. If you did enjoy, though, make sure you hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. Helps me more than you know. And as I said before, if you're looking to really up your dynasty game and just become a hardcore dynasty gamer and take all your league mates to town and just build dynasty after dynasty and just build a what do you call it? I guess a process of winning and just really encompassing not just player eval but game theory and everything into your dynasty approach, you should come check out the Wolfpack Patreon. Patreon.com/OurPack. I promise you won't regret it. Everyone that's in there right now, it's bumping. And, you know, like I said, I'm always talking strategy with them. And people are learning. You know, the biggest point of feedback I always get from the Discord is like, hey, you've changed the way that I play Dynasty. And that's exactly what I want to do. I want to change the way you play to make sure you become a winning player. Because honestly, man, it's not that I'm like smart or anything. It's just that there's so much table stakes, easy shit that's there for the taking that just people don't do. All right. So take the next step, take the plunge, get into the Wolfpack Patreon. Make sure you hop on, get that BDG draft guide. It's going to answer all your questions for rookies. It's going to live living things, so we're going to be dropping articles and analysis throughout. And like I said, every month I update my rankings, so you'll see the updated rankings in there as well. So if you guys like that, Patreon.com/OurPack. Hop in there. And hit me up on Twitter, man, at MikeMeUp with 2 P's. I'm always engaging with people on there. And, you know, it's going to be draft season. I'll be talking about all the drafts that I'm in, you know, all the trades that I make to help you guys make those decisions as well. I've dropped them all on my Discord with the Patreon members, and I'll drop them all on Twitter too. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. All right. I'm back to the grind. Team No Sleep for tonight. Wish me luck. Hopefully I'll get this episode edited out to you guys in time as well in the next hour or so. And I'll see you guys next week for another episode of Market Watch Mondays. Peace.